Hey, welcome to our helps section that we have going on here at Calvary Church. Just trying to give you some practical help in the midst of this COVID pandemic and some of the challenges that I think or I see that are arising within us each and every day as we continue on in this. Today, I'm joined with Gabi Rienas. Gabi is a professional counselor for over 25 years, dealing in multiple different areas. And she's actually an adjunct professor at Western University in the state of Washington as well. And so, Gabi, thank you for joining us here today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, today we're going to look a little bit at what I think is probably, I was thinking about this a while back, as I know I've been on my electronic device that much more over the last number of weeks. And I know the temptation that arises when you're dealing with electronics and the internet and everything else, the temptation to arise with regards to pornography. Now, you've had a number of years of experience of dealing with individuals who've have been wrapped up in the pornographic industry. And so I wanted to bring you on today to just kind of chat a little bit about that. Can you walk us through some of the steps that people take to find themselves getting wrapped up in porn?
Yes, definitely. I'd like to give some background first to kind of set it up because I think it's pretty important. But first of all, I want to say that sex is a good thing and that it was created by God.
Amen.
It was meant to be a holistic experience that engages our body, our soul, our spirit in communion with another person who we love and cherish and commit to. And that's when it functions best. And it's essentially a gift that God gave us. But if we break it up into its components, if we break up that body, soul, and spirit component, and we seek the physical part of it only, it brings us a different version of pleasure that happens to soothe us for a short period of time. So it's like we've taken the holistic thing and we've broken it up. And so for many people, this starts very early on. Many people who struggle with pornography were exposed at a young age, although this is changing now because of the prevalence of pornography and our exposure to it. But a lot of people started at a young age. And so you picture a young person who's very young, maybe a young boy or a young girl who comes across images like this. And what they receive is a stimulus, like they receive a good feeling, a pleasant sensation. And that sets us up like anything else in life when we have pleasurable sensations to seek that out again. And so it's essentially a way of getting a moment of pleasure without the complications of like relationship and love and commitment. I just get to have that hit of adrenaline. And so it's like a form of self-medication. It's like a hit of adrenaline and a moment of pleasure where I can get away from my stress, my conflict, my uncomfortable feelings. And so that actually works. Like that moment feels pleasurable. And so guess what? I'm going to go do that again because it reinforces itself. And so that's why white knuckling it, like what I mean by white knuckling is I'm just going to stop. I'm going to make promises to myself. I'm going to make promises to God. I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to make promises to my accountability group. It rarely works because the pull of that pleasurable experience and how it helps us cope with difficult things in life is so very strong.
Yeah. So how can someone self-identify themselves as okay, I have a problem with this? Are there certain little indicators for us that would say, okay, this is a major issue in my life, or this could potentially become a major issue in my life?
Yeah, I would say first of all, pornography. How do we know what's pornography? What is pornography. When you're looking at it, what is pornography, because it stimulates you in a way that is not something that you should be stimulated by. So that's it. First of all, if you're asking the question, is this a problem, beyond a 2-second thought, is this a problem? Not really. You're probably fine. But if it goes beyond, if you're thinking about it for more than 2 seconds, it's a problem. Well, I don't know, was that, if you're already there, it's a problem.
Right. Yeah. The passage of scripture that comes to my mind oftentimes is the one in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, where Paul says to the church, listen, Christ will give you a way out, in every temptation, Christ will give you a way out. And if we, even from experience in my own history going through, I see when those moments of here's the door, I've got to go out of this door now. And when we don't take that door, then we've missed that moment, and he'll provide another door. And when we choose not to do that again, is that the kind of thing that you're saying, that when you recognize the door is there, whether it be a thought, a prickling in your heart or whatever that says, okay, I got to do something different. I got to get away from this. And we reject that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I'm talking about that, taking the door. But another step is recognizing what prompted us in that direction in the first place. So we can't ignore that. What am I managing by doing this? Because we have to start facing what is driving us there.
So can you unpack that a little more? What do you mean by that?
Because I believe that pornography is not really about sex. It's about medication. It is an addiction, and like any other addiction, it provides medication. It provides a moment of relief from stress, from uncomfortable feelings. And what we need to do is identify, what am I seeking relief from?
Okay.
And for most people engaged in pornography, they don't actually know. They would say at the beginning, and in 95% of the cases that I've dealt with in my practice, they will say, I'm not, I don't know. I don't have uncomfortable feelings. I don't have anger. And that what is happening is that they're not in touch with how they really feel, their own anger, their own discomfort, their own uncomfortable feelings about their marriage. What they're doing is they're fleeing from that, and they're using a substitute to feel better. It's a medication. And that's why it has such a pull. Because when you think about it, a lot of people that are involved in pornography, they're married. So you could argue that a high percentage of those would have access to a sexual experience with their spouse. So it's not about sex. But it's about a feeling of pleasure. It's about a moment of relief without the complications of is my spouse mad at me? Are we talking about everything? Are we close? It's just a hit of adrenaline without dealing with the junk in our lives. And I would argue that what's needed in order to overcome something like this is to take a look at the junk, so that we can deal with it in another way, in a more aware way, and we can deal with it and apply our scriptural principles. But first, we have to face that.
Are there common things, themes that you've seen over the years in your dealing with couples or individuals? Because it's not always married couples. Obviously, there's a lot of teenagers that struggle with this as well. So are there common themes that are rising that are the indicators for you that you would say, yeah, it could be this, it could be that?
Yes. One common theme I see in working with young people, men and women, is family of origin, anger, issues, pain that I haven't really dealt with. It's uncanny how watching them have that aha experience as they first come in and report. Yes, maybe they had a difficult family of origin, but didn't really impact them. They're living their lives. It's fine. They understand. And then as we unpack that kind of place where they sort of a light bulb goes off and they go, oh my goodness, I haven't looked at this. I haven't felt the feelings yet of what's going on here. Some of them literally have said to me, I locked myself in my room and went to pornography without thinking about what was going on outside the doors of their room that they were actually medicating themselves for. So yes, a lot of times, and sometimes for people who are married, there's problems in the relationship. So I've watched that light bulb go off where they're telling me my relationship is fine. I had one young man I remember dealing with. He had a problem actually with his thought life that was very, very active, but not honoring to God. And he came into me and he kept telling me how wonderful his relationship was with his wife. And he was compartmentalizing that, as we do. My relationship with my wife is fine. It's perfect. We have a great marriage. It's so wonderful. And yet, on the other hand, he was spending hours, alone, just fantasizing and thinking about other things other than his wife. And, at a certain point, I had to say to him, you cannot say that you love your wife and continue to do this. Like, there is a dissonance there. It's like you're poking a stick at your wife every time you do this and saying, I love you, but I'm sorry, I'm poking you with a stick. I'm saying you cannot have it both ways. And once his eyes opened to that, he started having to be honest about what was really going on in his marriage, why he would do something that would chronically, again and again and again, bring pain to his wife if she knew about it. He had to start taking a hard look, and all of that was deep inside, and he had been terrified to look at that. But once he began to look at that and be honest about that, he was able to miraculously let go of some of those behaviors.
Okay, so let's kind of maybe go back a little bit here, because in our society we kind of prize ourselves as being sexual. It's free for all at the moment in many different ways. Why is pornography even an issue in the first place?
Yeah, well, I think we're being told that there is no big deal, that it's okay. And if you go to a secular marriage counselor, chances are good that they would question your problem with it. Might even feel like it was a benefit to the marriage. I think that we're way off on some of that thinking, because pornography leads to some really, really difficult challenges. One of the things is that porn is very much related to loneliness. Like, people who engage in pornography are very lonely. Well, first of all, they have a huge secret in their life, which isolates you from people you're around. Like, something that no one else knows. You have a secret in your primary relationship. If you are in a relationship, you're probably not talking about it. So there's a barrier there. And statistics show that, like, people who are heavily involved in pornography are very lonely. Like, the two are correlated together. Also, it makes an impact on the relationship. Like I said, it's going to affect your sexual life, because now you are messing with that. Remember, I talked about that triad before, body, soul, and spirit connection. Now your expectation for the body part is going to be skewed. You're going to need more stimulus. You're going to need more adventure, some of those things, because you have exposed yourself to that. And so that's going to impact your relationship. And you are bringing essentially another person into the relationship. Mm-hmm. A lot of men who are involved in, or women who are involved in pornography, will assert, this is not the same thing as being unfaithful. Well, I'm sorry, but yes, it is. You're bringing another entity into the relationship, and even worse, an identity that is in most cases two-dimensional, like not real. You don't have to talk to them about money. You don't have to interact about the kids. It's impossible to live up to that standard. So you're introducing another entity into the relationship, and it's hugely painful for those around. And I think a lot of people who are involved in pornography, they are able to rationalize it's not that big a deal. My spouse, I'm not trying to hurt them. This is different. I do love them. God understands. There's a lot of rationalizing that goes into it.
Yeah, and we're not even taking into consideration, as a follower of Jesus Christ, that God asks us to honor our marriage relationship, and so I think we could go a whole different road and just talk scripturally about how this is inappropriate. But yeah, some of these practical things I think are important for people to hear, because it isn't okay. Pornography, in whether you're married or single, it's just damaging to who you are as an individual.
Yes, yeah. Into a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about for those who find themselves trapped in pornography. Are there some tactics, some helps that you can give us today?
I'm a really big proponent of counseling for this kind of an issue, and here's why. I think it's good to tell someone, and that's a good place to start. It's a good place to start by coming clean and telling someone, but that's not a long-term solution. I don't mind accountability groups. I don't think they hurt anything, but I don't think they deliver what they're supposed to deliver because people lie. It's just too difficult, and they end up lying. So they have a limited purpose. I think they work well near the beginning of the process of coming clean. But the problem, as I said earlier, if the problem is becoming more aware of what's inside of me and what pain I'm managing that I'm maybe not even aware of, and what I'm covering up as far as my uncomfortable feelings, then I'm going to need help with that. Because if I'm not already doing it in a healthy way, that implies that I have a problem with that. And I don't know any other way of becoming more self-aware and becoming more in tune with the deeper things in my life than having another person come alongside. So if you have a very wise pastor, that's great. But for the most part, a counselor is going to be trained to help you to be able to unpack some of that. And it's not fun. See, we don't want to go there. That's why we go to pornography in the first place. A lot of people resist that. Why do I have to talk about pain in me? Why do I have to go there? Aren't we people who are overcomers? And I feel like I am an overcomer. Well, I would argue, well, actually, no, you're not, because you're leaning on something else. But you're going to need help to have someone say, let's talk about how these things have impacted you. Let's talk about how you really feel about what's going on in your marriage. And then once you talk about it and get it out, then also a counselor can help you. Let's find ways to manage all of those things in ways that are healthier and are not going to be disruptive in your life. So I really believe that you need help with these things. Groups can help. Groups can help. It depends on the leadership and it depends on the vulnerability in the group, but it can help or not help. And I think, try it, give it a try and see how that works for you.
Yeah. And this isn't just a male problem. You alluded to this a little bit earlier. This is actually a female problem as well. And that seems to be on the rise. I don't know if I think it's still dominated by male society, but maybe you have other stats to prove different.
Yes, very much more so equaling out. It used to be a male dominated thing, but it's very much equaling out because we have access to it and because it can be done in the privacy of your own bedroom if you're a single young person, or the privacy of your home. You can get on your computer and it's in our faces all the time. And again, if you're looking at that image and for those few moments, you feel some relief, you feel some pleasure, you're not thinking about your problems, you're able to zone out on that and just sort of feel the pleasurable things that go through your body in response to what you're viewing. Yes, it is a way of managing pain, just like a drug would, just like shopping can, just like food can. The problem with this kind of thing is it can be so hidden. It can be so private. We all have access to it, immediate access at the snap of our fingers, and it can be so private. And so it's going to be where we go to mitigate our pain.
And would you also lump into this not just the actual viewing of pornographic material, but the mental dialogue that you kind of alluded to it a little bit with in the past, but would you lump that into there, the pondering and the private thoughts that we have?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and again, it can be a way of dealing with painful things we're avoiding in our lives. If I just, I'm going through a difficult time at work or in my family or whatever, if I can take a few moments and get alone and revisit some of these images and I have a moment of relief, that's going to reinforce me going there again, because we as humans, we seek relief from pain. I mean, we instinctively do that from the first moment we're alive. We withdraw from pain. So it's a normal response. But what we need is people to help us find ways that God has given us to deal with pain in our lives, to deal with discomfort, to deal with the difficulties and challenges of life.
Any practical helps that we can have? Do you recommend certain things to put on our electronic devices, or barriers that we should put up for ourselves so that we don't go down that road?
I do recommend that, although it's not fail-safe. But I do recommend that there are some programs where other people can see where you're going, can see what websites you're visiting. I think that does help. It causes us to think twice. Again, it's not fail-safe because we can find ways around it if we want to. But yes, that we talk about it in our families. Like I said, I'm not against accountability. I just think it has more limitations than we think it does. Like having that accountability partner who's asking you, that's great, but realize you can lie. And they can overly trust you too. So, can quickly kind of drop the subject too. So that breaks down, but it's not saying it's not a good thing. So those are some things to do, and to be talking about it, having someone checking in with you, talking about it as much as possible. Yeah, all of those things help. And when I say this, protecting our children, like I talked early on about the young ages, people are exposed and becomes a challenge later in life. Be wise with your children and protect them from early exposure to this.
Yeah, definitely a needed thing that we need to do. Any words of advice for family members, spouses who are trying to help a son or a daughter or a husband or a brother or whomever in our circle of influence? Anything you can say to those individuals today?
Yes. Well, the first thing I would say is you have to bring it up. I mean, it's a hard topic. I think there might be some parents or spouses who would be like, I can't talk about this and it's too painful, but I think it needs to be visited, and a conversation must happen. I think for a parent, barriers, lines need to be drawn, boundaries need to be drawn. This is not acceptable in our household. This will not be happening. And that might mean having them visit their electronics in a public place. It might mean taking away for a period of time. But also, if it were my child, it were an adolescent, and it was a prevalent problem other than a one-time thing with a friend, I would start to get help for them and have them maybe see someone and have some counseling going on. If it's a spouse, wow, that's a lot more difficult. I think we must be clear as to our expectations as a spouse. I expect that you will not engage in this behavior. This is completely inappropriate. This is painful to me. If they continue, if they don't stop, that's something I think I would begin to discuss with others in my life to gain some objectivity and to have someone maybe give some input about how I could draw boundaries or what I would need to do. When is it time to wait? When is it time to act? It's a very difficult issue. And so I think we would need some outside input there about what to do and how to draw those boundaries.
Gabi, thanks for giving us your time. I appreciate all that you've been able to say to this topic. So pray that God would continue to use you moving forward as you continue to help others be free from this.
Thank you so much, and thank you for letting me give some input.
Well, I really want to thank Gabi Rienas for joining with us today and really touching on a sensitive subject of pornography. It is definitely an issue that's arising over the course of this pandemic, and I'm almost certain that some of you are going to benefit from this. And so I want to encourage you to check out some of the resources below and make sure that you're tapping into some of those resources. And if you do need help, please reach out, whether it be to us at Calvary or whether it be some of the other locations that with a professional counselor. Let us help you get the help that you need in this area.